Good evening once again, and welcome to the Monday Review Show, as it's Monday and it's 8 o'clock. Just a reminder, in case people overseas may have slipped your mind, we do have daylight saving, as they call it, on this side of the world. In other words, here in Ireland and in the UK and in many other countries, the hour has actually come back 1 hour. The Americans have a great expression for it. On this sort of thing, it goes back at the end of October, and then at the end of March it goes forward again. So the Americans have a great way of remembering which is which. So they call autumn, they call it the fall. So they say fall back, and in the spring it's spring forward. So it's a great way to remember it. So we are now in the difference for some of you where you were, particularly lots of friends we have in South Africa, where it would have been 1 hour up to last week's show. But of course, now at the hour, it's now 2 hours in the difference. I'm sure I'm getting that right. If I'm not, anyway, you'll know what I mean. But we stay the same here in Ireland and in the UK. It's 8 o'clock every Monday at this time on facebook.com/Hanging Judge Ref. I'm delighted to be joined once again by a former Premier League referee, former FIFA referee, and former head of the PGMOL. For those of you who don't know what that means they are the guys who effectively, for want of a better word, control and look after the referees in the Premier League and in the Championship. And that man, of course, is with me tonight and is with me every night, and I really do appreciate his coming on the show. Keith Hackett, welcome once again, and thank you for joining us.
Good evening.
Wow, Keith. I know this is a refereeing show and we talk about referees, and I must say to the people out there, we do not deliberately criticize, denigrate, accuse referees of anything other than trying to do the best job they can. But unfortunately, they do make mistakes, and they are making mistakes. And this is where Keith and I will try and dig into that and try and analyze where they're going wrong and what's happening. Why are they going wrong? So, Keith, penalties disallowed, some given, VAR and the referee disagreeing, sometimes agreeing. It's so frustrating from yours and my point of view that this is happening to our referees. You know, a profession, if you like, that you and I have been involved in for well over half a century now. And it's not getting any better. Howard Webb came in January. Well, it'll be 2 years now in January, and many would have seen him as a messiah, as somebody who's going to change things around after Mike Riley had been in charge, and everybody was really up for it and hoping for the best. And honestly, if anything, it's gotten worse.
It saddens me because obviously I've worked with Howard. I promoted him onto the Football League. I watched his career very closely. I watched the amount of hard work that he put in physically and his willingness to learn that gets him onto the international panel. And of course, eventually finishes up with a World Cup final in South Africa. He's a copper by profession. He was a policeman, as a police sergeant, running parallel at one stage between his refereeing and being a police sergeant. So understanding people and reading people and dealing with conflict and all those aspects. But it saddens me. It saddens me because the first thing is that there's no doubt that Mike Riley made a pig's ear of the PGMOL and its referees. Structurally, the people that he, if you like, involved in the backroom staff, and we saw that grow, and we saw the cost, the expenditure grow from 5 million to 33 million now, 5 million when I left. And I'd like to think, given given the point at which I retired from that role, we had a cadre of about 10 world-class referees. They did make mistakes. I want to make that point. There was the odd mistake.
Sure, and that's going to happen.
And that might have been, if I look honestly, it might have been in 10 games, we might get one error. If I'm looking at it in a simplistic way. What we would do is we would analyze those errors very thoroughly. We would do that by bringing the referees into Stockley Park, then not Stockley Park, but Staverton and Warwick University, our venues. We would show those clips on the wall. The referees would then discuss amongst themselves. I might be leading the discussion, or I might have appointed a referee to do it. And at the end of the session, there would be some honest talking, and we would try to determine as a group how to avoid that particular error in the future. I know that Howard Webb, I believe in his book, didn't like that process too much. But that's what a football coach does. He analyzes the games on a Tuesday and then goes out onto the training pitch, maybe with set pieces and various other things. And if the player's not coming or doing what he wants, he don't get in the team. So now we come to David Coote and his game, West Ham versus Manchester United.
Sorry, Kate, can I just cut across you there? With Mike Riley there was lots of problems. So just want to expand on this a little bit. With Howard Webb coming in, and everybody thought he was going to be a messiah, and he was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but he seems to be going along the same road as Mike Riley. Now that leads me to ask a question: is there football politics interference here? That maybe Howard wanted to come in and say, yeah, things were bad in the past, I'm going to improve them. Is there a possibility that he's not being allowed to do it by what I call soccer politicians? Is he being hindered in any way?
Well, I think that if he is, then he's not the person that I thought he would be, because I would, in that situation, resign my position.
Absolutely, so would I.
I wouldn't even hesitate. So he's come in, he's the head of the referees at a professional level. He carries the can for everything that is going off. He's the headmaster of the school that sets, if you like, the principles of how his teachers will teach and the expectation. And then, of course, there's a moderator that comes in every so often and checks whether the school is being run efficiently. So I think that the first thing is this. It wasn't working under Riley. So what he needed to do was a root and branch review. He needed to look at every individual, referees, assistant referees, the succession plan that was in place, how referees are assessed. I know that Howard wasn't too happy with my style of performance analysis, because it was, I interrogated thoroughly, and the marking system was such that if you made a KMI, a key major incident, the maximum mark that you could get out of 100 would be 59. So it penalized major errors. And what it did was focus all the match officials on saying, get the big decisions right. The odd throw in here, the odd free kick, right, might not influence the outcome. But the big decisions, you've got to get right, because this is what the expectation is of being an elite referee. So I'm quite clear that he's got people working alongside him people who are in administrative roles that are, if you like, part of a pyramid management structure. And if Howard is at the pinnacle of that structure, the danger always is it's black and white. And by the time it gets to the bottom of the management coalface, that black and white specific has turned to grey. A misinterpretation, or I'm not going to do that, whatever. So for me, I think there's people within that organization that shouldn't be there. Quite clear. I think it needs a root and branch review. I think there's lots of people who are in administrative roles that need to be kicked into touch.
Do you think they've been there since Mike Riley's time then? And you know, that he...
There's one or two who haven't. There's one or two who are new. You know, for example, I think one of the people involved came from British Cycling.
Cycling?
Yeah, from cycling.
Into refereeing?
One assumes that they're in an administration role. I think there's far too many people who I shudder, because I can see the cracks, and I'm not going to actually expose all those cracks. What I can tell you is that you've got signalmen on a train teaching drivers how to drive. You know, and the fire engine is going to the wrong place to try and put the fire out. As a consequence, it's probably 2 streets away when it needs to make a decision to put the fire out. And, you know, they've not taken advice. They've not actually done pre-planning. Now, I understand that there's 14 analysts involved in that particular structure. I think football is a simple game, and simplicity is the key to actually saying, how can we improve the decision-making process? We know these guys are professional and they're fit and fitter than what I used to be. I used to have to train, find time around work. You did the same.
Indeed.
Whatever our career was. These guys are full-time. They can pick the time of day when they go for a run or go to the gym. All those fees are paid, laptops are provided. Look, I put all those things in place. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we've got goal line technology, which reduces any exposure in relation to a goal or no goal, as it crossed the line or not. And that technology was very carefully worked out with Hawkeye. And I've said in the past my involvement with that. To get to a point where... Yeah.
And on that, Keith, there's absolutely no dispute when the referee says, no, it hasn't crossed the line. That's it. There's no dispute.
Correct. There isn't.
It's
because
100%.
Because the criteria that we laid down was very specific. That system only had to tell the referee that there's a goal. That's all. To a watch. I mean, now the FIFA have allowed it to be communicated because everybody's got communication kits. Another product that I brought in, having seen that in relation to rugby. So I'm quite clear about technology and the need to actually ensure it's got 4 wheels and it's got a good engine and it can meet a time frame that I set down, not the engineer or the computer guy. So the criteria with regard to now getting into the VAR scenario, let's look at the technology. We know there is a weakness in the offside decision process. We saw that this weekend. Player was onside, but it took them about 3 minutes to get to that particular decision, confirmation. Now that is because I think there's triple checking of the homework by the VAR operator. I just cannot make a mistake in this area. So that I understand that pressure that goes on those guys. So in the case of this game where we had the wrong outcome, not for the first time, the wrong outcome. I think there are technical issues. I can talk about those around offside, but this didn't involve offside. So I'll discard that for the moment. This was about a penalty kick. Did a foul take place or not? The referee, David Coots, in a relatively good position.
Yeah, he was.
His view is not obstructed. He finishes when he calls a no penalty kick decision, signalling it, doing it with confidence. He's about a meter away from the edge of the penalty area. So he's in a viable, position to make the call. This, when challenges are made, we can go into a room and have an 80-20, 60-40 mix on whether that challenge is a foul or not. There's subjectivity around that decision-making process. Every time there's a foul, in a way, it's the judgment of the referee. So the referee, in a good position, has said no penalty.
And that's according to Law 5. He has the final say.
Exactly that. Now what we have is VAR intervenes. Well, first of all, the criteria that is laid down in the laws of the game is that VAR can only come in on a clear and obvious error. This is not an error. This is not clear and obvious. So then think about Michael Oliver. Why has he come in? Because we can have decisions that are subjective, but this was 99% not a free kick. And when they start replaying it on television, I'm thinking, is it handball? Is it another offence away from the one that they're penalising? So now what we've got is, we've got the stride of the VAR saying you better look at the monitor. So we have a problem because there's now, I think, an hierarchy problem. Oliver sits in a glorified position of being seen to be, and I've quoted the same thing, our number one referee. That doesn't mean to say that he's the number one VAR operator. He ought to be, but it doesn't say that. You can drive a car, but that doesn't mean to say you're a Formula One driver. You're trained to be a Formula One driver. So now, why do we have our most senior referee, certainly in the top two, making a decision of bringing the referee because he believes the referee's made a clear and obvious error? So that was totally wrong. Now we've got the other problem. And this is about confidence. This is about Howard Webb saying to these referees, it's your call. It doesn't matter if VAR intervenes. I still expect you to make the right call. I don't want you to capitulate without thoroughly interrogating what is in front of you. That's not happening.
Is it that the referees, this might be a little bit of a rhetorical question because I think I know the answer. Is it the fact that the referee is using VAR as a crutch, and we've mentioned this on the shows in the past, and is scared that if he makes a decision, like David Coote was looking straight on, he could see this incident, but yet Michael Oliver buzzed him in his ear and said, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, oh, no, maybe I better go and have a look. Why didn't Coote go back, having looked at the monitor, and said, no, it's not a penalty, carry on? They always seem to go by whatever VAR will advise them to do.
Yes, they're conditioned. You're the psychologist, I'm not. You're the expert, I'm not. Under the current trend, it's my belief that the condition of the training of those individuals is they lose their identity, if that's the right word. They actually capitulate because immediately they've got something in their ear that says you need to look at the monitor. That is, you're wrong, Mr. Referee. Correct. That's why you've made a clear and obvious error, and I want you to come across and take a look. They're going to the screen preconditioned. That walk up here mentally, I'm sure he's saying, how do I get out of this? I've obviously made a mistake. It takes courage, and it also takes training. It also takes leadership and direction that says to that referee, you're the referee. It's on your head that you make the calls. The facility of VAR is just like the assistant referee. I want you to effectively make the decision. But what they're doing is they're going to the screen. They're not in control of the mechanics. There's someone else working the puppet. He's the puppet. The VAR is operating him.
Sure.
Manipulating him. Convincing him.
Yeah.
Because conversation, I'm sure, is taking place. It's not, you need to look at the monitor. On the way, I suspect, there's a bit of a debate and discussion. When he's looking at the screen, are they actually getting close enough to the screen and having the clear view that you and I have when we looked at this decision? And are they asking to see it again and again and again, like we might do? They're not. Now, are they under a time pressure? Well, to some degree. But what does Howard Webb want? Howard Webb wants, the game wants, the correct decision. The watch is stopped. The game is stopped. You get the right call. And I think these are all the pressures that are brought in on the system. Now, if we take Oliver, Michael Oliver refereed a game the previous day. How many times have I said, having a refereed a game, you can't be a referee and a VAR on the same weekend. Mm-hmm. And I will say this. If Howard Webb, by the end of this season, has not moved towards a panel of specialist VAR operators trained, I had an email exchange from an absolutely top level broadcaster. And he's involved in football at the highest level, projecting what is taking place, analysing what is taking place. And his comment to me today was eye-opening, because what he said was, I can look at a game in the stadium, but when I look at a game on television, I've got to develop different skill sets. I'm looking at a relatively small screen. I'm looking at an angle that's afforded to me. And you develop the skill sets of dealing with the technology without even thinking about it, calling up the screen, whatever, talking through the process. That individual sent me the clips of some of yesterday's incidents. And I was able to listen to him in the studio role, running through what he's looking at and how he's getting to a decision. And he's making more accurate calls than the professional referee. And
that's what worries me also, Keith. Are the referees scared to make the decisions? And just I got a text there from David, and he wants to know, because the commentators seem to know before we do whether it's going to be offside or not offside or whatever. Are they privy to the conversation between the referee and the VAR commentators? That is,
I believe they are.
Is that
so?
right?
That the commentators do have the ability to listen in, not to the entire process, but they, as I understand it, but they have that ability to listen in to what's going on.
Not sure that's a good idea, because they
well,
can.
I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, I look at it and I'm thinking, VAR at the moment is not being operated correctly. It's impacting on referees in a negative manner. The boss, Howard Webb, comes up last week and says, this season today, VAR is 80% operational in terms of its ability. Words to that effect. We've only made 2 VAR errors season today.
I saw that, yeah.
And I've gone, what? Why don't, instead of putting VAR in a box and saying the VAR's made a call, he should be saying the referee of the match has made the errors. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we know that the information provided, the interference by Oliver was incorrect. His judgment was, Oliver's judgment, incorrect. He's brought the referee across and the referee's capitulated. And in actually then, the team of match officials have come to a conclusion that they've made a major error. It's all of them.
Yeah.
I hope David Coote is not blaming Michael Oliver and Michael Oliver blaming David Coote, because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is the PGMOL. This is Howard Webb. It sits on his lap. I mean, he sits there. I've been in that position. I've been in that position when I've watched the game and I've seen a decision that's been made, wrong decision has been projected. And the first thing I ask is, talk me through that incident. I'll be on the phone and say, look, I've seen it. Talk me through it. Did you see it? What can we do?
Did you watch the Man United Fenerbahce match?
No, I didn't.
Mourinho got a red card.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. I actually had no problem with it. He's constantly outside his technical area. He's halfway down the touchline, almost to the corner flag. And then he's arguing with, now up to quite recently, as you well know, and maybe our viewers don't know, that people on the bench now, including the manager, can get a yellow and or red card, where in the past they could not. But Mourinho is a constant thorn in the side of match officials. Why is he allowed to get away with that? I have no idea.
Well, I mean, if I was the UEFA match observer at that particular game, I would be asking that question of the fourth official, in particular, and asking, why haven't you done your job? I mean, ultimately, he was sent to the stand, but he was out of control. I mean, the reality is, and I saw that bit, and I saw the dismissal. Yeah. But you know, we've got into this habit as referees. I've watched it this weekend, where we raise a yellow card and point to the recipient.
And there could be 3 or 4 guys there together, and you have to assume. Now, let's see who committed that. Oh, it's that guy who committed the foul. It has
Yes,
to be.
and they, you know, in the technical area, it's the same. They're pointing, and you think, is it the manager that's got it, or whatever? And then
There was one
what's
in the
happening?
Premier League as well with in the Liverpool game and Arsenal, and even the commentators were asking, "Who's the yellow card for?" And it turned out it was on the technical staff or the coaches or whatever. But they had to try and dissect the situation to see who actually got the yellow card. Why are they? I mean, goodness gracious, why are they allowing that to happen?
I don't know. I always used to use Neil Barry, who you know, was a steady Premier League referee.
Yeah,
never hit the big heights, but he was still a pretty good official. But his carding technique was the best, and I use that as an example. He used to get his book out, flip it over, and then ask the player his name and go through that process. Of course, what happens now is referees are using the yellow card, putting a label on the back of the card and writing on the label. How the referee manages when he's got 13 yellow cards, or Taylor with his 14, how that little stick-on label covers 14 players that have been cautioned is beyond me. I guess he knows that he can look at the DVD later and clarify all of them.
Just got a comment here from Keith. From Stuart Ainley, who's a regular contributor. Keith,
Yeah.
The panel of officials is not complete. What's KH stand for?
Go on, me.
You have 22 without VAR. They haven't got the appropriate numbers. Not sure what KH stands for.
It's me, Keith Hackett.
Oh, it's for you. Sorry.
Yeah.
The panel of it is not complete. KH. Oh, yeah. You're at 22 without VAR. They haven't got the appropriate numbers.
He's absolutely right. This is why I'm suggesting, and will continue to suggest, that there needs to be a panel of specialist VAR operators.
Yeah.
Because the very reason is that the more you referee, the better you become.
Of course.
And I used to say to my referees, you know, Webb, Paul, Halsey, okay to do another match. I wanted them to tell me to some degree when they wanted a rest or if they required a rest. Now, money impacts that decision.
Of course.
So sometimes I would have to make that decision based on the information I was getting from the analysis of distances covered, speed profiles, etc. Stuart is absolutely spot on. There are not enough referees, and I think this idea of refereeing one game on a game one day and VAR on the next is too much. You're still with the fairies after you've refereed a game. Particularly, you know, you might be pruning yourself and saying, didn't it go really well? Or you may have had a conflict situation that is baggage and you want to get rid of that. You want to analyze it. They're not analyzing enough, in my opinion. They're moving from their game as the referee, where they and then straight into Stockley Park. I mean, I continue to say this. I believe they should close Stockley Park. I think that they should operate out of broadcast vehicles at the ground or in a room designated in the ground, in the stadium, so that they're involved in the pre-match, they walk the stadium, they're involved in the post-match review. So that when the manager comes in 30 minutes, the VAR people are in that same room. Now, I know Stuart will tell us all that some of the dressing rooms aren't big enough, but I think there's an area that can be designated within a stadium after the game where they can all come together and have a genuine debate. You know, I mean, in my era, you would get you get the likes of Clough coming in and he'd go, "Thank you very much, ref," and that was it. Or he'd come in and just say, "Could you tell me?" And if there was any doubtful, it was Peter Taylor that was coming in. Just give him. He wanted a detailed answer as to why. That might be actually a player, because Clough was very strong on dissent.
Yeah.
So I think Howard has got an uphill task. I don't think he's had the ability, doesn't appear to have the ability to recruit. I think he certainly needs to bring in one or two new players into that coaching role. I think he wants to take some of the weight by having a good number two, and I don't think he's got a good number two. Someone who actually tells him the truth.
Yeah, not yes, man. Exactly. Keith, once again, many, many thanks for being on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you. And for you out there, thank you very much for watching. We'll do it all again next Monday night. Until then, good night and God bless. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks.